You guys can hear me well back there? Okay, right. Very good afternoon to all of you. I think we've had an excellent session in the morning, some great keynotes by some very, very inspiring people about mobile research and where we are headed. I think you smart guys would have guessed exactly what I'm getting into from the title of my presentation. But hold on, don't get me wrong. I'm a big proponent of mobile research myself. So let's not jump the gun, to the actual conclusion of what I'm going to come to. But let's start by giving an introduction about what we are doing at Ericsson. Ericsson as a company, I think, needs no introduction, but in the mobile space, we are a leader in setting up infrastructure, building networks for the operators, and also advising these operators to stay ahead of the market when it comes to consumer intelligence. Almost 40% of global mobile traffic actually travels through Ericsson networks. Now, a couple of days back, we had some interns coming down to Ericsson, and they wanted to do this internship program. They had the choice of choosing any division within Ericsson to do this internship. And one of the divisions is, of course, Ericsson Consumer Lab. That's actually to work with me in market research. So we had this intern coming up to me and asking me, Jasmeet, I need a very frank opinion from you. I've been studying about this industry. I'm very interested in this. What's it like being a market researcher? And I looked at him and I said, do I need to give you maybe the right, the correct, true opinion about this? And he said, yes, I'm definitely looking for the true opinion from your side, whether I should seriously pursue market research. And I just told him one thing. It ain't easy being a market researcher today. Market research is going to rock your world. The guy eventually dropped the idea of actually working with me and joined PR and communications group at Ericsson. While the conversation through with this intern, I also asked him, whether this is where you see yourself. This is your dream job. You want to do market research. And he said, no, definitely not. But I am looking to kind of pursue this. So my question to you guys out here, since we are so passionate about the work that we do, is very simple. For how many of you, market research is actually the dream job? You always thought about it, you wanted to get into it. Just raise your hand. Of course, some of us are going to be like landing up accidentally. Oh, okay, I didn't see the hands because that came as a shocker. Can we have the hands up? Okay, great. So for some of you, very few, market research is actually the dream job. For the rest of us, we just landed up accidentally. For me, I think market research, of course, was a dream job. I always thought of studying consumers, the cultural aspects across it. Everything was working smoothly till the time mobile market research came along. And there is a reason and why I'm talking about this whole nemesis of mobile market research. And let me take you back in time and give you some background on this. Now, this is a share of investments which Ericsson kind of puts into market research. And remember this is the share of investments that are going into high growth markets, researching high growth markets. So if you go back in 2008, 2009, in most high growth markets, we were predominantly doing a lot of traditional qualitative work, a lot of big, large-scale quantitative face-to-face studies. No surprises out there. Face-to-face studies happen in these markets. And because of the crippled fixed broadband infrastructure, we're just putting 15% of our wallet share in doing online surveys. Now, this was very different if I were to take a developed market like US or UK. Of course, you're going to have a larger share of online work that we would be doing. We would be doing an equivalent amount of work in traditional qualitative, and maybe the quantitative face-to-face part and the investment that gets into it would be very different. Now, going forward, 2010, 2011, you do see a change in the investment pattern. The investment pattern change was about moving a lot of our face-to-face quantitative work to mobile and doing mobile surveys. Because of the whole agility angle, we were able to kind of move more of our baseline surveys, our tracking surveys onto mobile. But the rest of the stuff, is just a marginal change here and there. look out for the traditional qualitative piece. It actually decreased because most of us are under budgeted. We have to work with whatever budgets we have. It's just about siphoning our budget here and there. Now, from 2010 to 2011, I started to take a keen interest in conferences. Learning about what's happening out there, what's the new innovation, what are people talking about in this particular sector. So I attended a couple of conferences. To name a few, TMRE, Market Research Event, MRMW as well. And don't get me wrong, these conferences are great, because you have these sparks of brilliances that you see from a methodological perspective. But the other thing that these conferences also do is actually create a self-doubt in yourself. There are a lot of huge cries about reinventing yourself, innovate, the death of market research, big data coming in. And apparently, the most interesting part is that the loudest cries are actually from the agencies and suppliers, as if they're trying to push down their agenda down your throat. So when you go back from these conferences, you're in some sort of a dilemma. You're some sort of a self-doubt, whether you're moving in the right direction, and you try to change things around. You chop and change your vendors more often. You tend to go back to them and ask you, do you have communities? No, that's the door. And it's natural, you're going to do that. So we did something similar. We went with the flow. We chopped and changed a couple of things around, and eventually landed up doing a lot of some new stuff. And the new stuff really was the investment in behavioral data and mobile behavioral data. So we started collecting a lot of passive measurement data that we had. Of course, we had a lot of data back at Ericsson, which we get from the networks, but this was data actually coming from the device of the consumer. So we started investing in mobile qualitative. We were the first ones to actually do a mobile qualitative using cloud applications like WhatsApp in emerging markets like India and Indonesia. So we were the first ones to do it. And you could see the change in terms of our methodological approaches. And this is really what I'm talking about, the 20% share that we kind of put into mobile behavioral data. Now, when I talk to my colleagues, they say, and especially guys at Facebook who are well versed with this mobile behavioral data, and they tell me, Jasmeet, you just opened the Pandora's box by investing 20% of your budget in mobile behavioral research. But let's understand why we wanted to invest in this area. Now, we were collecting a lot of data, as I said, mobile behavioral data, we had social analytics, we had a lot of data coming in from networks, trying to understand, because we build networks, we manage them as well, so we have a lot of understanding in that direction. But apparently, none of this data was being used internally for any decision making. So it was like the data was lying in the dark. Nobody wanted to touch this data. We were solely dependent on the market research primary surveys that we were doing and trying to get in a lot of attitudinal and usage-based stuff from the surveys. So one of the big questions our stakeholders had at Ericsson is this dark data sitting with us essentially a consumer intelligence goldmine? We didn't have the answer to that at that point in time. But we thought most of our customers, which are leading operators across the globe, aren't using any behavioral data today for targeting and personalization. And that is corroborated by a lot of surveys which have been done with C-suites and CMOs, et cetera, which talk about the fact that customers aren't using any behavioral data today. So we embarked upon this journey of saying, okay, now we need to use this dark data and put it to some actionable use. So we embarked upon this program, which was called the Data-Driven Decision-Making Program, or basically, simply put, dark data decision-making. Call it whatever you want. It's just a fancy name, right? So what did we eventually find out of mining into mobile behavioral data? Now, you might have seen this slide from a host of different presentations that we have had this morning, talking about how do consumers really use their devices across the day. Now, for us, the reason why it's important to understand how people use these devices is to plan the network accordingly. Different applications and services demand different capacities from the network. So if you're using video close to the site where you have a tower, you would probably get the best experience possible on YouTube. But as you move further away from the site, your video experience is going to deteriorate. If you're indoors, probably you will have a very pathetic video experience. So it's important for us to understand how people kind of consume different applications and services across the day. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I've just put in a slide that we got from our analytic vendors. Once we got this dark data, we started working with an analytics vendor, and we said, okay, let's start analyzing how these applications like video streaming, browsing, and shopping are being used across the day. Now, we found some good insights, which is people are shopping on the couch. It's not really that they're going into the store and using the shopping applications. They're sitting inside their home, having Wi-Fi connectivity and using these shopping applications. What we also saw was the peak that you see very, very late in the night, about late night impulse viewing. It's, of course, a lot of catch-up TV that people wanted to have, a lot of very impulse viewing for video streaming services that we saw out here. And then the interesting part was also that mornings were now the new prime time, because as soon as you pick up the phone in the morning, you want to check Facebook, you want to browse on the news, you want to do a host of different stuff on your smartphone. Now this was among the 5,000 Indian smartphone users that we had in the panel, the dark data that was sitting with us, and we started analyzing this. Now, this was the exact same slide that we presented to our product guys. And they saw this, and they said, is there anything more that you want to tell us? Because you're just stating the obvious. And that's a problem with behavioral data. At times, what happens is obvious trends lead you astray. And this is, in common language, called the giraffe effect in data. It's one set of data which kind of takes over the other set of data in your behavioral data set, right? In that case, you saw those peaks that were happening late in the night and shopping kind of peaking. So what you find really is this giraffe effect. Simply put, I'll explain the giraffe effect out here. So imagine yourself in a natural reserve, you have a binocular, and you kind of set your eyes on this majestic animal, the giraffe. You can't get your binoculars off it. Now, in terms of relative size, there is a huge difference between a giraffe and the other animals. Now, this relative size difference is not going to be visible until and unless you set your sight and your binoculars on the smaller animals. That's where you kind of start seeing relative differences between the other animals. And that was the biggest problem for us. We were just stating the obvious from the big data because of the aggregated views that we had. And we often were leaving out the phenomenal insights that we had. But the bigger problem was that we were reducing customer behavior into just zeros and ones. We were not looking at the human aspect as to why people do what they do on their smartphones. And that was something which the mobile behavioral data was not giving us. So we went back to our video product guys, because they were responsible for video streaming services, etc. And they said, okay, great. You're telling us there is late night impulsive viewing, so we will design our networks now to ensure that people are going to get good capacity when they start using videos late in the night. But tell me this, why is there a peak early in the morning? Can you just explain why is there a peak early in the morning? Now this was an obvious question which we didn't expect, because we had just handed over the slide deck to this guy and explained him exactly what was happening with the behavioral data. Now, this needed some serious thinking on what we're going to do next. So we said, okay, in order to understand the why, the easiest thing to do would be to just take out the people who are streaming video early in the morning and poll them. Poll them using mobile surveys so that we can really understand what's happening out there. So we polled them. We polled all the guys who were streaming video services at 6 to 7 a.m. in the morning. What did we get? So then, were mobile surveys able to answer us why people kind of use what they use? Well, when we polled these guys who were using video streaming services, only 12% of the guys who actually stream videos said they were using video applications early in the morning. Just 12%. And that too primarily watching Bollywood videos, just for having a lighter note in the day, just to have a lighter note of the start of the day. Now this was not something that we could go back to our product guys and explain, just 12% guys using video. Why is that we see a peak in the morning on the traffic? There had to be something happening out here. And that something was not visible to me till the time I actually saw this happening in my own household. Now, there is a common ritual in most of the Asian households. I don't know if you've noticed this or not. But every morning, the first thing that happens in an Asian household is that the elders in the household go on and switch on the television set. And you know what they're doing by switching on the television set? They're switching to the channel which has devotional songs. The reason for that is they want to play the television set as the highest volume in order to ensure that the chanting actually goes across the different rooms. Now, I found that same phenomena happening in my household with my 60-year-old mom switching on the television set at 6 a.m. in the morning, switching the channel to a devotional channel, and playing that chanting, and playing it on the highest volume. I was visibly very upset because of this, because I was getting up at 6:30 in the morning with work starting at 10. And I wanted to confront her on this, but I thought, why can't she do this personally? I mean, what's the point on switching on the television set and playing these devotional songs? Of course, she wanted the chanting to spread in the house, and the day should start off with a spiritual beginning. Well, that's great, but why can't she do it personally? But the fact is, if you can't visit the temple, you bring the temple to the home. Now, we have close to about 330 million gods and goddesses in India. And you can very well understand it doesn't end here. It never ends. You got to appease every god and goddess at some point of time. But if the television set is being used as a spiritual tool for a 60-year-old, why can't a smartphone being used as a spiritual tool for somebody else? Now that stuck to me, and I went back to my agency and my partners and said, I don't think we're going to answer this question by just looking at technology, mobile behavioral data. We need to do something very different out there. So we got a 26-year-old moderator, or not really moderator, but an ethnographer, and we placed her in a household of a 23-year-old. And we asked her to shadow her for about 3 days. And we did this for about 11 different respondents, because we knew that this video streaming phenomena was happening in the 21 to 25-year-old household. So what did we find eventually after investing in doing ethnographic work out here? Now, this is the 23-year-old that was being shadowed. She is a typical example of the youth from India, very liberal, very competitive. She follows global culture and fashion, and she kind of reflects the new India in a way. Now, this is one side of her. There is an alternative reality to this 23-year-old as well. The alternative reality was this. At 6:30 a.m. in the morning, she flips out her smartphone, goes on to watching a spiritual video in the morning. This is a 23-year-old Indian youth watching a spiritual video in the morning. Now that was something. We were taken aback. We never expected this. And of course, there was a question from somewhere who said, what can't mobile research can't answer? What are the sort of questions mobile research can't answer? This is the question mobile research can never answer. The result of this was, we went back to our video product guys, and we kind of give this personas, to the type of people that we met and the phenomena out there, and they were so damn impressed by what we had actually uncovered. So we were able to kind of really figure out the why behind the video traffic surge in the morning, and really, the stakeholders were just like crazily, happily, wanting to invest more in this. Now, this doesn't end here, because there are problems now coming our way. Now, the success had a ripple effect, because now we had a lot of different stakeholders asking the question why on every peak and trough in our mobile behavioral data. Now, this is not the ideal situation that I would like to be in. After investing a lot of money in traditional qual and investing a lot of time, as you would understand, in shadowing and doing ethnographic work, this is not the situation that you would like to be in. Now, let's go back to the investment slide, because, and this is my reaction to every why that they kind of gave, as a question to us. I was like, do we really need this? It's like, yes, we do need to know the why. So if you look at the investments, and this was from 2008 to 2012, what is our investment share now in 2013, 2014? This is interesting. 40% of our investment today is going in traditional qualitative work. And this is not what we expected. We're back, even, in fact, we are breaching levels of 2008, 2009, where almost 35% of our investment was going in traditional qualitative work. Of course, we've added a lot of other stuff as well, which is mobile qualitative. We're still doing 20% of behavioral data investments, but the rest of the stuff is pretty much similar. But 40% of our investment today is going in traditional qualitative work. Now, what's it doing to us is really getting us into a very, very stressful situation, because we talked a lot about mobile being the savior, mobile being agile, and mobile helping a lot in terms of giving the in context. But here is the actual reality in terms of what a mobile giant, technology giant, is actually facing day in and day out when it comes to investments getting into market research. Now, I was impressed when General Mills talked about that 80% of their projects are totally mobile. I don't see Ericsson anywhere going near that level of 80% of mobile. We, of course, would like to invest in mobile behavioral data. We will, of course, get into uncovering the dark data that we have sitting in the organization, but I don't think we were ever going to invest into the levels where we could reach 80 to 90% of our work is mobile research. Now, this has also a problem in terms of what I want to pursue more. Of course, we want to invest in emerging technologies and research, but if we don't have a budget in terms of investing in emerging technologies, and we're just about busy looking at our dark data and answering the why behind each and every peak and trough that we have in our data, there is no way that we can ever explore the alternative mediums that we have. So, in terms of just quickly, summarizing and looking at what the future looks like. Now, if this is going to be the situation day in and day out for me, probably I need a stress-relieving device. I'm serious. I've tried a couple of other options as well, using a dartboard with all my stakeholders and playing dart on them, maybe a punching bag with all the stakeholders, but it doesn't help. I need something else. It can't be Google Glass as well. So I've invested in really a good stress-relieving device. And it's been manufactured by an Ireland company, and they call it the PIP. Right? The PIP is actually a device which uses biofeedback, because when you stress, you kind of sweat on your palm, right? So it can measure the electrical conductance on your palm and tell you, how stressed you are. And then what it does is, using gamification, is able to help you control your stress. So it works in a fashion of a game, right? So you play one of the characters. If you're able to relieve your stress, you go faster in the game. Now, this is something that I've really invested in. The device comes about $75 to $100. Mine is on the way to be shipped, and I'm looking forward to it. But the way things are going with these new technologies and innovation and mobile market research, here's my prediction of the day. 3 in 5 market researchers are going to use these stress-relieving devices by 2020. So, looking at where are we headed, and summarizing, there is value in confusion. I understand that. There is value in confusion because eventually it leads to something very phenomenal. And that's great, but too much of confusion can add to your stress and anxiety. I was looking at the Quirk's report, and the title of the report was Overworked and Under-Budgeted. That's phenomenal. That says it all. What I also think is going to happen is that there is an exciting future emerging for qualitative researchers. Now, we have a lot of talk about big data versus market research and all the stuff that's happening out here. But when you look at the actual share of investments that are going through, I think most of the brands, as and when they start looking at the phenomenal amount of data that they have and start seeking answers to it, they will look for the saviors of context. And the saviors of context are you guys sitting out here, the qualitative researchers. So there is an exciting future emerging for you guys. Now, what it's also doing is that dark data sitting in organizations like Ericsson is flipping the conventional market research model. So how did market research really work? You had a business issue. You would go out and do some traditional qualitative or qualitative work to understand the motivations and needs, and then you would try to quantify it. But that has been flipped around completely. You have already got a quantified data set available with you, and now you're going out and seeking the answers to the why. So that's a big change that is actually turning across as a trend in the industry. Now, with you, all these guys, all of you smart guys out here, what I only like from you is get me out of this vicious cycle. I haven't had a vacation for the last 6 months. So all I want you guys to understand is that it's going to be messy. Let's accept it. It's going to be messy. But what I want from you guys is just one thing. Give me back my life, for God's sake. That's me vacationing, actually vacationing out there. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Delphi? Hi, Chris Colton from Vertigo. Thanks a lot for an awesome presentation. It was really, really very, very good and very, very interesting. I have a question about the dark data that you have been working with. What level of detail do you have into the content that consumers are consuming in that dark data? Basically, sort of what level of detail were you seeing in that dark data?
So we're using today different data sets, of course. A lot of traffic-related information in terms of how many megabytes you use per day and stuff is coming from the networks. Of course, a lot of passive data is also getting us real-time understanding to what people use when, and in terms some bit of context if we are able to geolocate. So that is the amount of granularity. We of course have a lot more granularity going down to what is the type of network that they are on, whether it's a mobile broadband network, it's a Wi-Fi network. We also have a lot of understanding on the network experience, so how many app crashes you possibly have in a day. That is something that we track on a daily basis. And of course, we work a lot with the likes of Facebook and LinkedIn and others, because it's a different thing designing an app. And at times you tend to take it for granted that connectivity is going to be there. But in most of these markets, the level of and the quality of connectivity is not that great. So maybe when you start using Facebook, you need to render images at a low resolution in order to ensure that people get the right experience. So those are some of the insights that we tend to work with, and the level of granularity that we have.
Hello. Hi, Deb Campbell from Nestle. Great presentation. I like the fact that you're kind of where we are, which is there's a lot of good things and a lot of hard things about where we are right now. My question to you is, your original method to answering the why was a quantitative survey, but you only got 12% saying that they even watch streaming videos. Why do you think you got such a low response to the quantitative survey that the qualitative ethnographer was being able to figure out?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if I clarified that in the presentation itself. At times what we have learned is that culture impacts success in the mobile space, and culture has a lot of angles to play out here. Here in this scenario, you had a 23-year-old who is with the times. She follows global culture, fashion, food, etc. But she's really reluctant to accept her religious and spiritual inclinations. And that is the reason why when we polled these guys, they were reluctant to really accept that they were watching videos. And the people who did accept kind of pointed us in the wrong direction, which is watching Bollywood videos, which is not what they were watching in the morning. And that's where cultural nuances kind of play, and that's where big data can really go, make you go onto the wrong path, and you start making the wrong conclusions. So it's important for us to have more validations apart from just looking at the mobile behavioral data that we have, and invest more in traditional qualitative research, more observation-led research, rather than asking the actual consumers about what they do, which I don't think we're getting the answers to.
Just for the purpose of time, I'll take one more question on that.
Try to keep it short. Ericsson's on top of the Internet of Things. You guys are now moving towards the connected world. And I'm wondering, in your role as a researcher, how do you see enlightenment through sensors everywhere as they go out, especially in quantitative sense?
Yeah, I mean, we of course, as researchers sitting in an organization that firmly believes in Internet of Things and as an actual reality that might come in 5 or 6 years down the line, our customers are really starting to speak about the quantum of data that resides with them or will reside with them. So the last term that I heard from a customer was brontobytes. It was not petabytes or zettabyte, it was brontobytes. And I went back to the customer and I asked him, what the hell is brontobyte? He's like, add 1 and 27 zeros ahead of it. That's brontobytes. So that's the level of data that is kind of going to be thrown at you. As a researcher, I'm shit scared. I would accept it. Because you saw the problems that we are facing right now. We have claimed that space ourselves, that we are going to be the saviors of understanding the context and giving you an answer to why. But of course, we don't have the resources or the budget to kind of get in and answer each and every why that is kind of thrown to us. And when we have sensors and Internet of Things and data, which is really phenomenal, as I said, it's going to be messy. So we need to prepare for that future and prepare well. And that's where all of you guys out here, we need to sit down and talk about what are the possible solutions today that can help us really get to the context and get to the context very quickly.